Let's look at Adam Bandt's budget reply. Hello everyone, Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee because, well, I thought we'd have a look at another budget reply. Someone wanted to hear what the Greens have to say about the 2023 budget, so let's have a look. Let's see if we're at all surprised, guys. Let me know if you think they're going to support it in the comments, guys, while I have a shot of coffee. Okay. Labor's budget leaves millions behind. Here we go. Oh, what's concerning is the Greens are getting more popular. That's the concerning thing. So Labor's budget keeps people in poverty. I mean, do they fundamentally believe that the government can get people out of poverty? It's a big win for big corporations and the very wealthy. It's a betrayal of renters, students, job seekers, young people, and everyone doing it tough. At the election, the Prime Minister said no one would be left behind. Yeah, it's just rhetoric. You don't believe it. I'm still waiting for no Australian child to be living in poverty. So you can't... I guess the fundamental difference between people, all across the political spectrum, shall we say, is you've got people more left-leaning. They believe and hope that the government can solve problems. Well, I'd say people that are more right-leaning don't think they can think the government is the problem. So, I mean, would you put your hope in them, or would you sort out your own problems? I think that's the fundamental difference of approach. One thinks we can collectively get together to form a solution, and I'd say the other group distrusts and would argue it's individual responsibility and opportunity. But let's have a look at what the Greens have to say. Labor's budget leaves millions behind, leaving people in poverty, while billionaires get tax cuts. Not just billionaires. Everyone gets a tax cut. Guys, come on. The media just paints a... They love to really play with the fact that we've got a staggered tax system. You know, so such and such poor person only gets such a tiny tax return or tax back, while billionaires are getting $9,000. Yeah, because they pay a lot more. Tonight, as the court starts to bite, people are going to sleep, freeze in their cars. Well, yeah, that's happening more and more. And I'd argue you can't blame the federal government for it. You can't blame the previous federal government for it. You can't even blame the state governments. I'd say a lot of that is the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard crowd, the local councils stopping development. That's what I'd squarely push the blame on. Remember we were looking at Northern Rivers, how they were bitching and moaning and sending an emergency plea to the federal government. Who do you think made it difficult to develop there for all that time? But people won't see that. Tomorrow there will be people who wake up hungry and wonder what they're going to eat. Well, sadly, that's just every day. That's part of life. And some people go through that for a period of time and get out of that. And right now, there are students who will wonder how they will cope with the next rent rise. But Labor's budget spends $250 billion on tax cuts for the wealthy, with $9,000 a year for billionaires and politicians. I wonder if all of the Green politicians will take that $9,000 and donate it to a food bank. It has $16.7 billion handouts for wealthy property moguls and $368 billion for nuclear submarines. Labor wants to be the superior economic manager, but for who? It's not young people, it's not students, it's not renters or first-home buyers. It's not those on income support or disabled people. It's for the big corporate donors. No corporation left behind. That's funny. I have to admit, yeah, that's good. No corporation left behind. Labor is managing the economy for CEOs, billionaires, and the property moguls. If you own scores of homes, this budget is for you. If you run a coal and gas corporation, this budget is for you. If you own a private jet, this one is for you. Wow, they really love playing the class divide, isn't it? If you're rich, Labor's got your back. If you're on income support, you get $2.85 extra per day. It's hardly enough to buy a loaf of bread. Well, you're not eating a loaf of bread every day. You're eating a loaf of bread once a week. $2.85, you can get some potatoes. There you go. Even $1, you can get some butter. Real cheap stuff. There you go. There's a meal. Or maybe people don't see that. If you receive rent assistance, you'll get an extra $1.12 per day. That's not going to cover rent increases, which are rising 10 times that amount in capital cities. I wonder if the Greens are going to mention at all the increase in immigration, the 1.5 million people coming to Australia over the next few years. Do you think they'll mention it in this reply? Because of the supply issues we have in construction, that will put additional pressure on the market. That's all of these prices that we're seeing, rents going up, houses going up, these are just signals. I was explaining this to my daughter. She was saying, she's asking, why can't they just make houses cheaper? Why can't the government do that? And I go, well, you can't really. All the federal government does is hand out money, and that overheats it. Prices are not a bad thing when things are expensive. That's a signal to increase supply. Have we forgotten that? That's what these things are. They're signals, and we're ignoring it. We're making it more difficult to build. We're making it harder for people to get building approvals. Maybe we need to look at council response times. I was talking to a town planner the other day. He was telling me it took 8 months to get an approval to change to dual occupancy. Why shouldn't that take 2 weeks? Maybe this is what we need AI bots for. How many of those jobs could be replaced? $1.12 a day to cover skyrocketing rents, while billions go to the wealthy property investors. And for 5.5 million renters who are not on rent assistance, nothing at all. Well, they're probably used to getting nothing at all. The middle class are used to getting absolutely nothing. The problem is, there's going to be a lot of people that haven't experienced labour at a federal level yet. You'll learn why people often become grumpy old conservatives when they get older, because their naivety and youthful optimism kind of gets smashed out of them by reality. Maybe I'm just evolving into my boomer form. Meanwhile, the government is collecting more from Labor's increase in student debt, then changed charges to the tax on big gas corporations. Labor boasts that they're in surplus, but you can't use a surplus to pay the rent or buy food. He's right. Every dollar of surplus is a dollar not spent lifting people out of poverty. So they really think that the government will lift people out of poverty, where I would argue it's the individual's job to lift yourselves out of poverty. The government needs to get out of the way to allow that to happen. This is the ideological difference that I have with the Greens. A fundamental difference here, an axiom of belief that's radically different. I guess that's just my upbringing. Including single mothers excluded from Labor, undoing the damage since their attack on single parents over a decade ago. And disabled people facing $74 billion to cuts in NDIS. Oh, you can't just keep it growing, okay? It's not a magic money tree. NDIS, it's a challenging issue. It's highly emotive. You've got a whole lot of people that depend on it. It's improving people's lives to no end. But then you've got a market which is entirely tied up in getting NDIS accreditation to just be able to charge it. So, I mean, here's an example I was talking to Rachel about, because she manages the NDIS, getting like a booster seat for our son that could be covered by NDIS, or you could buy it from Amazon for $50. But to use the Amazon one that isn't NDIS approved, you need a report written, which costs money. So it's just, it's a joke. It really is. And by the time she's gotten to the point where I'm looking at him, no, he's fine. Just let him sit there. He'll be fine. Let him sit on the chair. He'll manage. That's how you build resilience, and he's doing fine. Except when he climbs up and turns off my screen while I'm working on this. This is the latest thing. Edward, he's 3 years old. He has Down syndrome, and one of the therapists wanted to say, we need to really teach him cause and effect. And I'm going, he knows cause and effect. I'll be sitting there playing a computer game. He'll sneak up behind me, reach up, turn the button to turn off the screen, and laugh at me. He knows cause and effect really well. But anyway, back to this. You can't just keep throwing money at it. Something has to give. It has to change. These aren't tough choices, as the Prime Minister likes to say. They're just bad choices. What's the alternative? Despite the Treasurer failing to mention climate once in his speech, the Greens have secured more than a third of new climate spending, with a $2 billion package to help household businesses and public housing get off gas. So they want to electrify businesses. This reminds me of that whole cash for clunkers thing, where they would buy crappy cars in America to get them off the road. If you've got perfectly good infrastructure that uses gas, that still has a whole lifetime of its use to offset the embodied energy in the manufacturing of that. And gas is not this horrible poison. It burns very cleanly. It's not the end of the world. Okay, using it is not the end of the world. They're just ideologically driven here. So think of this. Say you use so many carbon units to manufacture all of this gas infrastructure. Now, rather than letting it be used for its entire lifespan to offset that embodied carbon, you're throwing it away halfway, and then you're buying something new that someone wouldn't have bought anyway, which has a whole lot of embodied carbon in the manufacturing of it. So hopefully the electricity that you're going to use isn't powered by gas or isn't powered by coal, which is going to be worse than using the gas, which it will be, because all states that run on renewables are topped up. But I don't understand. The average punter doesn't get it. They don't think about these things, honestly. They watch their Married at First Sight crap on TV, look at the headlines, and just follow the herd because they don't want any social stigma. They don't want to think outside the box. And that's what we get, people voting for stuff like this. Labor's still spending $41.4 billion on fossil fuel subsidies, more than the $29.5 billion climate spend. Is that subsidies, or is that not charging them fees for their mining vehicles that are buying petrol and aren't going on the roads? That's not a subsidy. But that's how it's portrayed. It's deceptive. The way they word things is deceptive. I don't trust these guys. I really don't trust them. Yeah. When the budget legislation hits the parliament, we'll fight to make the big corporations and billionaires pay more tax and for more support for people who need it now. The Greens will be fighting for renters and against the billions in handouts to property moguls. We'll be fighting for the climate and the environment and against handouts for coal and gas companies. The only reason we've got a surplus in this budget is because of coal and gas companies. And probably iron ore too. All the natural resources that we're exporting. And they want to get rid of it. It'll make no difference, honestly, on a global perspective. I had one nutter lefty rambling on and on about particulate matter, and we need to shut down all the coal mines. It's not shutting down a coal mine in Australia won't make an impact to someone living in China. That's where the issue is. It's probably got more to do with their urban planning than anything else. But the government has the power to tackle the inequality and cost of living crisis, but instead they make it worse. They say no one left behind, then betray young people and those in poverty. They say they are ending the climate wars and hand out billions in fossil fuel subsidies. They say they want to tackle housing, but they are giving nothing to 5.5 million renters and refuse to direct investment in building more housing. Labor could work with the Greens to tackle the crises we face, but instead, Labor is betraying people and leaving them behind. Voters elected this parliament to act on climate, the environment, and the cost of living. If Labor worked together with the Greens, we could immediately stop all new coal and gas, lift people out of poverty, freeze rent increases, and wipe student debt. Wow. All people out of poverty. It's just that easy, guys. It's just that easy. Haven't we heard this all before, all this rhetoric before? This is what we'll continue to fight for. They want to like lift people out of poverty. They want to help renting people. So they want to lift people out of poverty, wipe student debt, They want to freeze rents, but they also want to stop an industry which employs a huge number of Australians and is a huge section of our exports. How the hell do they want to do all this? Well, anyway, let's have a bit of a talk about this one. So there we go, guys. The Greens' response to the budget. I mean, they're a minor party, but they've got a significant influence. Don't underestimate them. They're growing in popularity, usually with younger people that honestly haven't lived long enough to understand the implications of what the Greens are saying, haven't seen the reality of a whole lot of the fear-mongering disappear. It's interesting. You've got in the economic world, and you see it quite clearly on YouTube, the fear economy, where housing's about to crash. And I've talked about it. You know, the gold is the future, the US dollar is crashing, the economy, fear, 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 doom, 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 fear, 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 flames everywhere behind you, alarms blaring. Like when I had my video about 7-Eleven coffee costing $2. That's a segment. People like get suckered in on that, and they just keep repeating the same shit over and over and again. Again, for years, years and years, like a warning, such and such is about to crumble. Quick, put all your money into shitcoin or some garbage like that. But it's just fear. It's edutainment and it's fear, and people eat it up. It's no different to the environmental movement. And that's been going on much longer. From Malthus, we've had fear about calamity. And it's what we've seen. Remember the 80s. Acid rain, dolphins dying, global warming. Fear, fear, fear. It's always right around the corner. Always about to collapse. It's the same thing. People get suckered in, and then it becomes part of their identity. And then they repeat the same shit again and again and again. They're ideologues. They can't even challenge these core beliefs. And that's the danger. And that's the Greens. That really is the Greens. Oh boy. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts or opinions. What do you reckon? Are you happy with their budget reply? They can solve all of these problems. Maybe I'm getting too old and cynical. Anyway, take care. Check out Heise BIM or Heise Does. And if you're a fan and enjoy the content I create here, you can support us on YouTube or Patreon. Use our referral links, buy our pocket squares, or call us if you need an architect. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.